Nathan Seeckts is a singer and songwriter from Geelong in Victoria who released his first album, The Heart of the City, in 2019. He has been releasing some great singles over the past few months, and they can now be found on his new album, Something Rare and Beautiful, and I'm going to talk to him about that. Hi, Nathan.
How you doing, Soph?
Very well, thank you. I've been listening to your album, and it's a full spectrum, full color experience, I think.
Yeah, that's the beauty of a spectrum, is there's a lot of distance to cover.
Yeah. Like, yes, look, there's a lot of life in it, but I wanted to start by asking, what are the rare and beautiful things for you?
Oh, like I found myself talking about music being the great uniter. That I think those are the rare and beautiful moments that I'm finding. Being able to go back out on the road and connect with people. You could walk into a venue and you could be in a sea of strangers, but by the end of the show you've been able to connect, maybe over a beer, or there's a song that you've found some common ground on. And a lot of the people in my life I've found through those moments. Like, I think that's rare and beautiful. We had a pandemic baby. There are some rare and beautiful moments there, in amongst all the other things. And yeah, so being able to go out on the road, we did a South Australian tour, and I say we because it was my wife Sharon and the toddler and myself. We did the tour for the first single over to South Australia through regional Victoria. We just came back from New South Wales, and the three of us went again. And those moments where, like, we call them like the core memories that we're sort of we're developing and we're making. Those moments are rare and beautiful.
I think on the album you write about some experiences that we might all share, yet because they're personal to you, they are rare. They've only happened to you and in your sphere of family and friends. So I really like the fact that you were able to be so specific and therefore be universal. I'm wondering if that's been a characteristic of your songwriting the whole way along. It's
definitely something that I chase. It's the dragon. When I first started songwriting, I'm sure that there are people out there who are familiar with Pat Patterson's work. He's at the Berkeley College there over in the States, and he's an amazing teacher of the word, the economics of the word. And he talks about how you can make your words someone else's, and vice versa. You might talk about running along the beach at full speed, and when you say that, the beach that I'm thinking of is going to be different than the beach that you're thinking of, but can still connect to that core experience, I guess. And so that's something that I try to not shoehorn in, but be aware of as I'm putting words down, or when the editor comes back to finalize what's going to be the version 5 of the song if we get there. Definitely thinking about those sort of things. So when you started to write this album, did you have a specific starting point? Was there one particular rare and beautiful thing in mind? Was it actually the experience of music you were thinking of? The first song that I wrote for the record was track 6, which is Little Church. Oh yeah. And that is definitely, like, if you put, let's say Moonlight Creek from the first record, which is heavy, and then you put Little Church on after it, or even vice versa, you'd go, this is not the same person. So I guess I knew that I'd done the heavy stuff, tonally, and I wanted to see if I could create something that was not heavy or sad. It wasn't a sad kind of song, but it still had weight to it. Like the first time I played that song, I finished I preambled by saying, I've written a happy song. I hope you guys are going to be okay with that. And at the end of the set, a good friend came up and she goes, "It's still sad." Like, yeah, but it sounds happy. It's a major key, I'm sure. there's a lot of twang and uplifting moments in there, man. It's all right.
And it is about a wedding day gone awry. But it's a whole story. Like there's a whole wedding day in there. So I'm wondering, for that song in particular, did you start with a scene or did you have the whole story in mind?
Oh, I thought of just what could go wrong, and I listed everything. Like I had a page, and I just started writing down what could go wrong, and oh, that won't fit. Oh, that or how can I make that part? Yeah, it was definitely a juggle.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's very vivid, and it is the list of things you don't want to have happen on a wedding day.
It's just I'm trying to get onto like Farmer Wants a Wife, or like one of those other things is like, we'll get a sync deal in there somewhere.
Well, I think saying you drove 3 hours to the ceremony, that's Farmer Wants a Wife territory right there. Just you and the celebrant. Now, part of my impression of the album is that you are documenting some nostalgic parts of your life, but you're not wallowing in nostalgia. And it's more of an acknowledgement of the contribution that the past makes to the present and the future. I think that is a bit of a theme that runs through quite a few of the songs.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't write much through the dark years of 2020, 2021. A lot of the album came out sort of as we started to open up as a global community and local community. I wrote the closer of the album, The End of the Rope, which is a song of hope. That was the only thing I wrote during that time, and that was specifically because I needed some hope. And the songs that I was listening to in my downtime, which was a lot, they were songs of hope. There was a lot of Nathaniel Rateliff, and there was a lot of Springsteen, and a lot of Stax soul stuff. And that's how we sort of wound up with that big closer sound. I forgot what the first question was. I started talking.
No, it's just about nostalgia being part of it. But I will ask. Sorry, go on.
No, that's cool. Like I get like that. I forget what the starting point is. That's how a lot of my songs start. I forget start. They wind up finished. But yeah, like I didn't want to write about. I've said this on stage numerous times. I didn't want to write a song that was about everything that I watched on Netflix, or here's my couch in great detail. Here's 10 songs about my footstool. It's I looked in rather than out, and started to look at some of the greatest hits of Nathan's life.
Yeah. So in saying that you didn't write a lot during the dark time, some people did. Like that was they thought, oh, yippee, like I've got time to write, and they were quite productive. But it seems that there was also amongst songwriters a response to how their own energy was flowing. It's like if it was stagnant because of lockdowns, they just weren't going to push it, and they weren't going to force themselves to use what seemed like a good opportunity to write a lot. Was that the case for you?
Yeah, when the first record came out in 2019, I threw everything that I had into it, as well as working full time. It took me over to the States to do Americana Fest and Queenscliff Music Festival, and there are a lot of positives that came with it. And by the end of that 2019 year, went into the start of 2020, and I was just burned. Like I was pretty tapped out. Mm. And everything stopped. I went, cool, I'm going to do that too. Right. And there were months that I didn't pick up a guitar. I was right there teaching remotely, and the guitars were like behind me like they are now. I had no interest because there was no story to tell. There was no experience. That I was like, you know what? I need to tell people about this thing that I've just done, or that's reminded me of an experience that I had when I was 11 or 12. I want to share that with the world. Just the juice wasn't flowing.
Yeah. So have you trusted your instinct in that way before as a songwriter, or perhaps from the start? That was the first time.
Look, not the way that I have on this thing.
Right.
My mindset changed. I wasn't sure how many of these things I'd get to do.
Right.
So I was like, right, if this was the last one, what pieces of me could I inject into it? I don't think I gave entirely over to the process. I think there's a lot more. Been walking the earth for a while now. So I think there will be more records, but I just had not let the guard down, I guess. And that's a thing you do. You put the walls up, and then it takes a long time to build them up, and it takes a long time to bring them down.
Yeah. Well, you said you didn't give everything of yourself. I think that's a good thing for artists to hold something back, because otherwise you can really just run the well dry, essentially. I mean, I know you keep living, you make new memories and things to write about, but I don't know that the audience is owed all of you, if you know what I mean.
No, I think we give enough of ourselves, not just in our music, but in our silly little Instagram posts that we do to try and get some traction and some content. It's like, look at me, look, I'm doing it. Yeah, so I feel we do give a lot.
Yes. And there's also, you've got to keep something back for live performance, because that's a whole energetic arc of ramping up and, tapering down and all those sorts of things. And if you ran yourself out as a recording artist, as a songwriter, nothing there for the performance.
I remember, and I'll paraphrase here, it was Billy Corgan from the Smashing Pumpkins who talked about, the really sad songs or the really heavy, weighty songs, especially if they are personal, that you need to detach a little bit and not give yourself over to it, especially in that live performance. I've done that. There's a track on the record, I Watched You Slip Away From Me, and one of the first times I played that, I actually had to turn around at the end of the playing of it, because I was in it, and I was like, sorry guys, I'm just going to need a moment here, because I was like, oh yeah, it's a lot.
And I can understand why in that track, because it is very powerful for the listener as well. Obviously more powerful for you because it's your experiences. But speaking of another particular song on the track, Cassette in the Tape Deck is a lovely tribute to your father, as is the music video. Had you written a song about him before?
No. And that was one that I labored over, probably more so than I have with any other song. Like, there are some songs that come to you, it's almost like a gift from the universe. You sit down and 20 minutes later, you've got this thing on the page. It wasn't like that with that song. I had a fair idea, but I wanted to get it right. And yeah, like I'd never sort of written a song for a family member, or, delved into, like, that is 100% autobiographical, that song. Like, everything in that song happened. And yeah, it was a very nice experience to be able to share that with him. When it came out, he was pretty stoked. He still says online, like in the comments, he's one of the biggest trolls I've got, that he prefers the Wildest Thing. And I was like, cheers, Dad, that's awesome.
Well, that's interesting as well, considering what the Wildest Thing is about.
Yeah, look, he's lived a life.
And clearly he's wanting to remember that through that song.
Like the support, yeah, like he was all for it. And yeah, he was like, why are you writing a song about the Tirana? I'm like, because that was like, I was 11, and
yeah,
that kind of car, and maybe it's the rose-colored nostalgia glasses, but an $800 rust bucket can be a sports car, man. It's yeah.
Absolutely. Another song on the album is King of the Room, which is about a very relatable experience, being at a gig when someone is talking their way through it, but someone else is talking their way through it. But the subtext is that music deserves respect, I think. I'm wondering if you feel that respect for live music might have dissipated a little when we didn't have it for so long, and that perhaps there's a lot of stuff happening with live performance at the moment, where ticket sales are not what they were. It's very hard for artists to let people know, I guess, or get their attention for gigs. So partly I think everyone's a bit out of practice going to shows, and perhaps forgetting how wonderful live music can be, how wonderful it is.
Yeah. Look, I think coming back very early on, there was almost like when you switch the lights on or the cockroaches freeze, like there was or the deer in the headlights sort of look about it. But the people who came back early were the people who really needed it. Mm-hmm. And they were so appreciative. And I'm very lucky to have those people coming along to shows and really caring about not just the music, but me as a human being. And that level of respect, when it's quiet, that's a good thing. You sort of finish the song and you're like, you guys okay? And it's like, yeah, we're being respectful. It's like, oh yeah, okay. I remember that. That's cool.
Yeah. So have you played quite a bit over the past little while since Victoria opened up again?
Sorry, my internet's a bit funky.
I was going to say, have you played quite a bit since Victoria opened up? I mean, you said you've been touring, but have you played in your home state a bit?
Yeah, this year especially, I feel like the ball is rolling really well. A bunch of shows around Melbourne and Geelong, and there is a really nice crowd of supportive people that are excited for the record. And I've had some lovely conversations with people who were just a little bit not surprised, but like, oh geez, man, this is really good. Like, which as an Australian, you don't know how to take a compliment. So you go, oh, cool, man. That's cool. Even talking about it now, I'm just like, how do I talk about that without, how do I just do it in general?
Yeah. It is an Australian thing, but also I think because, again, back to the specificity of your lyrics, a lot of people in the audience would find a lot to relate to, and I think in turn that helps them connect with their own memories of things and their own feelings about things that have happened to them.
Yeah, and that with cassette, I think more so than anything that I have written before, everyone remembers the first family car. Mm-hmm. And if you were lucky enough to have two cars in the family, I've had some people that have told me about how there was the good car and then there was the car. And that, in our family, we're not rich by any means, but there was always dad's car, and the interior of it always looked the same. There was always surf wax. There was always like one cricket pad. Like, I don't know where the other one went. Like he was an avid, or he is, or was an avid cricket player. And, it was the interior was always the same. There was always, the same cassettes with like, they were cassettes in the wrong cases, like with the wrong rolling. And you're like, oh, I want to listen to this John Farnham. And you open it up and it's Bob Seger. It's like, oh well, win-win.
Now I want to know what happened to the other cricket pad. That's a mystery waiting to be solved.
He's a mysterious man, my dad.
Now, I'm also interested in when you started performing, you have this fantastic voice. It's not a voice that just turns up by magic one day, I would imagine. So have you developed your voice over the course of performing?
Yeah, look, I don't have any problem going to a 100 or, I had someone say to me, as the first record came out, you don't have to come out at 10. You can come out at 6 and then level it. So working on the dynamics of my voice, not trying to compete with audiences, like trying to sing over the top of people who are talking doesn't work. You almost need to go the other way and bring it right down, and then they'll sort of go, oh, okay, and shush. But yeah, my voice is definitely something that I've worked on for a long time.
Of course, if people start talking, you could just start singing King of the Room and maybe they'll get it.
But they don't do it at my shows. Like, it's almost like I want people to learn it and then they can cover it at their shows. And like, oh, okay, we've got a couple of chatty Cathys down the front here. And it's like, damn. Yeah.
Now you're for several years until last year a radio host as well. You had Last Night in Town as your show, and it was a beloved radio show. I'm wondering if you miss it at all, or you needed to set it aside in order to work on your music.
Look, a bit of both, honestly, Soph. Like, I do miss doing what you do, which is sharing the music of Australians. There are not many outlets that we have that are independent and, you know, fueled by passionate people, you know, people like yourselves and people like community radio. It's filled with people who love music. And I do, like, I really do. I needed time to be able to put my voice back out there. I felt that when I started, or before the pandemic, I was the musician who had a radio show, and then I became the radio guy who, oh, didn't you play music as well? And I didn't like that switch of things. As I said, the toddler arrived, and I want to be present. You know, and what goes into a show is not just roll up at 6 p.m. on a Thursday and play whatever. You've got lots of emails to get through, and you want to make sure that the playlist, like an old mixtape, that it's got to have flow, and, you know, you can't put anyway, there's a mechanics to it that we could probably go into for ages. So yeah, I do miss it. There's been opportunities for me to do some guesty spots on some other people's shows, which has been lovely. But yeah, look, I would never shut the door on it. I think that would be silly. But I definitely, miss being able to sing the praises of my peers and my friends who I know are busting their butts to put music out each week.
Yeah, and there is so much great music out there, including your album, Something Rare and Beautiful. There is my segue. And, Nathan, it's been so good to talk to you about the album. It is a fantastic album, and I think really deserves many, many listens, close and far, actually. Enjoy the music from afar, come up close for the lyrics. And hopefully people will get out to see your shows when you're playing next. Thanks so much for talking to me.
Very much so. I really appreciate it.